Hello, everyone. Good to see a few familiar faces.
Hi.
Hi, Paul. I think we'll make a start because we've only got an hour, folks. So I'm keen to make the most of the time if possible. So welcome everyone to our Officer Network meeting, focusing on how we can support our local economies in the wake of COVID-19. Something I know that we'll all be busy grappling with at the moment. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Jonathan Downs. I lead the corporate policy team at Oldham Council, and I'm also responsible for the facilitation of the officer network for the CCIN. I hope you've all enjoyed the conference so far. The technology is holding up, which I know has been a huge surprise to me, but I know it's testament to the hard work of Nicola Huckabee and the colleagues who are supporting the event. And I think it's going really, really well. I've been bobbing in and out today. We've got suddenly found out we've got an Ofsted inspection at the moment in Oldham. So we're gearing up for preparing all our children's services, and colleagues are gearing up for that. And I keep getting pulled in and out, but I'm really glad that I have been able to still facilitate today's meeting, because I'm really looking forward to hopefully hearing some of your ideas. I know we all need them at the moment. As I've said, we only have an hour today, so I'm not going to ask everyone to introduce themselves now, but it would be great if you could tell us your name and where you're from when speaking or asking a question. Just as a bit of context and a bit of background to the session, I think you know, we've all felt the impact of the pandemic on our local economies. You know, it's been huge, and in some cases it's been devastating for some local economies. I know in Oldham we're seeing a huge rise in unemployment, and people who are now having to seek support and help to keep their businesses afloat, people who found themselves unemployed after furlough and don't know what to do. So we're seeing a huge increase in demand, and I know that councils are absolutely integral to ensuring that we support these people, that we support our local businesses and help our local economies to continue functioning. As we start to reopen the economy, businesses that were forced to close are looking to us for guidance and support about how they can reopen safely. And I think locally led action is going to be really key to ensuring that the economy recovers in a way that addresses the long-term inequalities that we've seen across the country. So this is some of the areas we're starting to really put a lot of thought into in Oldham. What do we actually want the future of Oldham's economy to look like? And I'm very aware that all local economies are different right across the UK and will require very different things to stimulate them. And I think today's conversation is about anything that anyone's doing at a local level, anything anyone's seen or spotted that they want to share that is interesting or that is different about how they are approaching local economic recovery in a post-COVID landscape. So rather than me talking all about everything we're doing in Oldham, I just want to open up the floor for any initial observations or thoughts or ideas that anyone has when it comes to economic recovery and jobs. Anyone keen to kick us off? Go on, Gareth.
Just to break the silence, I think I've mentioned on a previous call, we've started an initiative in Stevenage where we're looking at our procurement system and community wealth building side, so looking at the social value within our procurement system. So that's moved forward a bit. I believe I'm not a lead officer on it at all, but I've had a little bit of anecdotal information about how they're looking particularly at areas of deprivation, but also just looking at the supply chain within our procurement system and how that might impact. I think particularly, obviously, we're a two-tier system within a county, so that looking at procurement across the county, across all public sector entities, and how there's obviously looking at priority supply within Hertfordshire, even obviously if it's not from your own borough, and that sort of thing. So if there's anyone else looking at anything similar, it would be great, because we're just starting that process. It would be great to hear if anyone's got any examples.
Brilliant. Thanks, Gareth. And I think, Reuben, do you have your hand up?
Yes, I do. Let me just get this technology working. Take my hand down. I think it's an observation, really. It's something I think we're all trying to tackle, but it's that balance between supporting your local economy and those environmental impacts about, and let's be honest, is a consumer society, and it's about how do you fit that square into that circle about supporting people's livelihoods as you know, working in a shop, against the lowered emissions we have and the impact on the environment by not traveling as much as we do, and how does that all sit together? And I think we've had quite long philosophical conversations in our council, and I'm sure you all have, and I don't suppose there's an answer, but I think what I'm getting at is that we're not going to go back to where we were, but what's the next thing going to look like that ticks all those boxes? Or do we make the judgment call that we don't tick all of those boxes and come to a least worst option?
I think they're both, you know, both really interesting points. I think just to start with, Gareth, I don't know if you've seen that Wigan have just launched their community wealth building strategy. I don't know if we've got anyone on the call from Wigan today. Actually, no, I don't think we do we? But it'd be worth having, if anyone's interested in a community wealth building approach, it's definitely worth having a look at Wigan's strategy. And Reuben, I think that point about how we start to recover and still balance that ambition for the environment is a really interesting one. I think there's a lot of evidence to show that the way governments are thinking at the moment, national government especially, isn't particularly green. I think they're looking to build back in a very similar way to how the economy was functioning before. And I think it's actually at a local level, isn't it, where the real drivers are to see us do something different. So yeah, really interesting. It's a slight aside, but we've got quite a few businesses in Oldham who are now thinking about how they shift to becoming more locally focused in terms of their economic footprint, in terms of what they're doing. The pandemic has, I think, brought into sharp focus, hasn't it? People want to buy more locally, and they're caring more about where their food comes from. So we've got a number of food businesses in the borough who are thinking about things like that. Does anyone else have anything they want to contribute? Abigail?
I must change the name. It's Sandra Mitchell. It's my daughter's Zoom who set the
Of course,
Zoom thing.
sorry, Sandra.
I suppose just really, it's so difficult at the minute. So we actually had sign off to our community wealth building strategy in March. Obviously we worked on it a lot before March, but it actually just out of time and happened to be signed off by Cabinet in March, just as lockdown sort of hit. And from my perspective, and I don't know if people have looked at ours, but I suppose what we tried to do was get the economic part of community wealth building and the social aspect of it and try and put it all together in one place, because a lot of them I think are more economic focused. And for me, when we've been reviewing it, and obviously we've got a delivery plan that sits alongside it, for me, there's nothing in terms of what we wanted to do that changes because of COVID. But some of the things that are in there, so some of the stuff we want to do, for example, around anchor institutions and getting them to sort of sign up to a pledge and things like that, or a charter, what we've had to do is recognise, for example, our universities, this isn't going to be the focus, so that's not what we're going to be looking at. So there's something about we have to pause that maybe to a degree, but then there's other things that we're doing. So certainly the way that our voluntary sector stepped forward to support us through our community hubs and what have you, that gives us a great urgency around that part of it. So nothing's necessarily changed per se, and I have to say that we haven't really done a huge focus in terms of the green economy. But what has changed massively is the order of things and the importance of things. Everything's still there, but it just needs updating and it just needs reviewing, and everything else we've done. So we, as a precursor to that, we did a really, really huge resident engagement exercise to understand what was important to people. And we've updated that, obviously, just to check that what people thought was important to them pre-COVID is still what's important to them, or is there anything else? And the big thing that they hadn't particularly raised previously was around employment and jobs. And that is something that's the new thing that's come out in terms of that resident engagement. So we haven't changed stuff, but we've updated it, and we've changed our focus maybe in terms of our timelines of what maybe needs to come first, if that makes sense.
I think Paul wants to come in at this point.
Yeah, I would totally agree that I mean we've been doing work on pre-COVID. We were doing work on tackling poverty in the borough, and also a commission on the skills agenda. And I would totally concur that, you know, those things, those priorities in those areas haven't particularly changed. But what has changed, I mean, particularly looking at the skills agenda, because in South Tyneside and many areas of the Northeast is very much reliant on the hospitality sector. And what we're trying to do is to try and engage with the business sector to say, well, look, what are the skills that you were needing? Where are the jobs? Where are the skills that are required? So we can actually feed that into a skills agenda and something that goes through schools and through colleges and through individuals that actually meet the needs of the jobs that are there now and in the future. So that's part of our economic development plan. We're involving members through the scrutiny process in actually looking at that, and so because they can engage with members. But it's very much about that, and I would totally agree. Our relationship with the third sector has very much grown, and I mean it was pretty good to start with, but it's grown exponentially throughout this period, and we're working very, very closely with them, and we're looking at various initiatives to sustain that relationship as well.
Quick question, Paul. You know, when you were talking about building, if you like, those pipelines for employment, so getting people skilled up for the kind of jobs that you want to create, how have you identified the kind of industries or jobs that you want those people to work in? It's just something we're sort of battling with in Oldham. Is we've got a lot of low skilled jobs in Oldham, so we want to create pipelines for better jobs, but those industries don't necessarily exist here at this moment in time. They exist in other places, so we're almost gearing people up to leave Oldham. What's your thinking on that?
Well, it's very early days, and we're just engaging at the moment, but we're looking at developments. For instance, we have an advanced manufacturing park that's being developed, and that's very much around sort of new technologies, sort of cleaner, greener technologies, if you like. The automotive industry, although that's having its problems at the minute, but we're very much at the early stages, because what we are certain of is that the skills offer now doesn't match. It isn't leading to jobs. You know, it isn't leading people into jobs. It's leading young people into that's not leading into jobs and professions. So, as I say, I mean, it's very early days, but I'm happy to report on that as it develops.
Thanks, Paul. Sandra, can I come back to the point that you were making around volunteering, which I think is sort of quite a common theme across our places at the moment, our local economies. One of the things that we've been looking at well, I know a few local authorities across the network have been looking at, is how we start to actually put more of a value on volunteers and volunteering, because we know that it actually contributes to our local economies and our places. Is that something that you've done any thinking about in terms of the community wealth building approach? Does volunteering form a sort of a key part of that approach for you?
Yeah, there is absolutely a strand of the delivery plan which is about volunteering, and I think that's one of the things that needs a little bit of an update. So when we first started doing the plan and thinking about our delivery plan, what we said we needed was a platform to make it easier for people to understand what the opportunities were for volunteering, and to readily know what skills, or if there were any requirements that you needed, so that it was all in one place. And we'd actually procured that platform and started using the platform again pre-COVID. We registered over 1,000 volunteers in the early part of lockdown on that platform. So it gave us a really, really good opportunity. And what we ended up doing was we ended up still maintaining as the local authority the platform so people could register, but then we almost gave out those volunteers to the voluntary sector organisations in our community hubs. What it did do for us, though, having the platform, what it did do was it gave us a really, really easy way of sending an automatic email to volunteers, to continue to thank them. It has triggers in that says when somebody did however many hours or so many days or had been volunteering for a particular length of time, automatically they will get something. So it allowed us to absolutely value them and make it very easy to value them and to send that sort of recognition. But one of the things we've absolutely got to do is find a better way of doing that. So we've got a simple way. It's easy for people to know what's on offer, easy to know what if they need anything for it, and easy for us and other organisations to thank them for the time. And just an email or something like that makes such a difference. And we did pick up something in National Volunteer Week, which happened to be in the middle of lockdown as well. But that is certainly something that's in there. But that's one of the things we need to do a little bit differently as part of our changes.
Brilliant, thank you. Yes, Paul.
I was just going to add to that in terms of volunteering in South Tyneside. We're developing alongside our community and voluntary sector coordinating organisation a volunteer passport. So basically that means that you can take your DBS check and your training and all that package along to another charity or another volunteering opportunity. So you don't need to have to go through that every time. So it makes it easier for people to go from one volunteering opportunity to the next. So I think that's one of the things that hopefully will help, because we've had, as everybody's had, a lot of volunteers, and we want to actually build on that impetus and keep those people and try and get them onto other to continue to volunteer. I think the other thing we're thinking about as well is that the term volunteer isn't exactly a good one for a lot of people. When we talk about volunteers, the immediate vision in some people's mind is the sort of retired person who's doing something for a charity or a food bank. It's not necessarily going to attract a wider range of people. So we're trying to think of terminology as well to use to attract more people, more in terms of social action and social engagement, that sort of thing.
Thanks, Paul. Again, really, really interesting stuff. I think there's going to be a bit of at some point, we're going to see a conflict between people who want to spend more time, as you said, contributing socially to society, versus, again, that economic growth agenda, where we're almost encouraging people to, that people have to have careers and get jobs. And we're starting to think about that again in Oldham. How do we actually value our volunteers and give people the space to volunteer, both from a council perspective and from a wider perspective. I know, like a lot of other local authorities, we've tried in the past to give people time out of the organisation to volunteer in the local community. So we've given people 3 days a year in the past. All staff can basically go out and volunteer with local charities. But I really like the idea of that volunteer passport and making it much easier to transition between different organisations, because I think that's just such a barrier at the moment. So I'd be really interested to see more on that, if you can send through details at some point in the future.
Yeah, no problem.
I think Gareth wants to come in.
So it was just to ask the question on data and information. I know we're as a borough, we have quite so much disaggregated data, the unitary may. If anyone's got any idea, any experience working with other organisations, we've setting up some partnership. We have obviously the Citizens Advice Bureau have some information on things, and we've got our own welfare stats and that sort of thing. But if anyone else has got any thoughts or anything that they've done that's innovative in this period, we're getting a sense of the economy, that'd be great.
I think, judging by the radio silence, Gareth, that everyone's probably in the same boat when it comes to data and intelligence on the economy. Does anyone have anything data related? Well, if anyone thinks of anything, we'll come back to that, Gareth. Anna, I can see you've made a point about employee volunteering programs from an economic development perspective. Can you expand on that a little bit for us? I think Anna may have frozen. Okay, we'll come back, Anna, when if you. You can try speaking without video, Anna, if that helps. No? Okay. I'm going to put you on the spot, Fiona, but I was just wondering if there's anything from a Cardiff or from a Welsh perspective that might be slightly different to what we're doing in the rest of the country.
At the moment, so I'm Fiona from Cardiff Council, anyone that doesn't know me, hello. So at the moment, the Welsh Government has started introducing localised lockdowns. So Cardiff's been in a local lockdown for 10 days, so we're not allowed to leave the county's boundaries without a good reason, which would include going to a job or going to education, but apart from that, we can't get out. So that's been slightly tricky. The economy and jobs, I mean, as I've talked about before, our primary focus has been on the city centre. A third of the city's jobs are based in the city centre. And we did a lot of work sort of working out a new one-way system around the city centre for pedestrian access and also cycle access to certain areas to encourage people to be able to continue with retail. And then the hospitality sector, again, I've talked about it before. We've got a brand new castle quarter, at least we did in the summer time. The weather's not quite so conducive to sitting outside now, but certainly we closed one of the main streets in the city centre. We're able to build a cafe right on that city centre that then any of the local cafes and restaurants could then deliver their food to the people in that cafe in a socially distanced manner. So that was to enable, especially the smaller cafes that were really struggling to actually have the capacity with the 2 metre rules in force. And that during August, that brought in over £370,000 into the local economy. So, and I also include, that's also a case study in the ebook that was just launched this morning. If anyone wants, they can check it out there for more information. Away from the city centre, sorry, Gareth, I got distracted. I'll come back to you, Gareth. Away from the city centre, we have done a bit of work in our district shopping centres. So we've been expanding, widening pavements, sort of moving into perhaps parking spaces that were on the edge of the pavement, just to give people a chance to be able to, you know, go into shops but create that distance. We've tried to make them quite attractive as well, and thinking about the green economies. We've got planters that we've used to segregate the new wider pavement from the cars. That's being expanded out across the city. Yes, and what was Gareth's question? I've forgotten already, sorry. Anticipating jobs leaving the city centre. I don't know what anyone else is thinking. Me personally, I mean, so we have 80,000 people a day commute into Cardiff normally from neighbouring authorities. I don't see how that would ever go back to that level after this. So I'm sure it will create a massive transition to, I don't know whether it's businesses relocating out to Cardiff, whether it's people working from home more. Honestly, I don't know, and I don't know what the economic development people are thinking, I'm afraid. But personally, I think it has to have an impact. It must do.
Have you noticed, Fiona, have you noticed much in the, has there been a big return of people to Cardiff city centre in terms of office workers, for example, or are a lot of them still based at home or furloughed?
I think a lot of them are still based at home, to be honest. I've barely been in the city centre myself, but I certainly get the impression that home working. So the Welsh Government have maintained work from home if you can throughout this entire period from March onwards. So I know Boris Johnson changed the line at some point to encourage people to go back to the office. That's never changed in Wales. So there's really been very little people going back to the office that I'm aware of. There's more awareness now for perhaps mental well-being, combating loneliness and stuff like that. That's become more of a focus with the local lockdowns now. They said actually they have tweaked it slightly. So for a single adult living by themselves, you can keep your bubble, because they were all disbanded when the local lockdowns came in. I can now keep my bubble, just from a well-being perspective. So again, going back to the office, I could go back to the office a little bit for mental reasons, if it, you know, well-being reasons, if I wanted to. But primarily because Mark Drakeford, the Welsh First Minister, has never changed the line and work from home if you can. There's not been much change since March.
Great stuff, thank you, Fiona.
That's okay.
And I can see Anna, you've managed to rejoin us. I don't know if you can speak without video, if that will work.
Hello, thank you so much. It's about the 6th time I've joined this meeting. It's raining here and BT renewing the poll, the Telegraph poll. I don't know if you've moved the conversation on, but I was just wanting to say we're really interested in setting up a volunteering programme for employees in the city. So getting businesses to set up volunteering programmes. And I think there's a real danger that it becomes the kind of team day out type programme. And what I really want it to be is more of a COVID emergency response type programme, in as much as, so going back to your question about the data as well, so we've been looking at our IMD statistics and in particular where skills are an issue across the city, and the fact that a lot of those youngsters will be even further behind in those deprived communities. How do we get our businesses to use their 100,000 or something employees across Plymouth to help us address that? I just wondered if anybody else has got experience of that kind of thing, as the conversations I've had suggest that the real trick is finding opportunities for those people. As I'm sure we've all found, there's no shortage of volunteers. The difficulty is finding the opportunities for them. So interested in anything. So thanks for coming back to me, Jonathan.
No problem, Anna. And I think Paul would like to come in at this point.
Yeah, well, there's two things. Firstly, about matching volunteers to opportunities. At the start of in start of March, we were asking for volunteers, and we had, like everybody else, massive influx of volunteers. But we didn't have the means at that time to match the volunteers with opportunities. We didn't know who they were, so it was very, very ad hoc. Now we're talking to the sector about having sort of oven-ready opportunities. So they're actually producing, we would like to do this and we'd like to do that. And if we have 200 people who come from Sage saying they want to volunteer, we have an opportunity there all ready for them to do. And that's what the approach we're working on now, is to make sure the opportunities are there in the first place. In terms of trying to get businesses to have corporate volunteering opportunities, we do have some good examples, but at the moment it's not very widespread in South Tyneside. It's something that we would like to develop, and we have a social media campaign called Love South Tyneside that we're trying to attract businesses onto, and hopefully on the back of that we'll be able to get some of them to start to sort of formally adopt volunteering policies within their organisations.
Brilliant, thanks, Paul. Does anyone else have anything to add to Anna's question around volunteering? I'll just chip in then, just with a very, very quick point. I think one of the things that we found, and this is actually, this is pre-COVID, was having a really good range of volunteering opportunities was really important. I think people tend to have, as Paul alluded to earlier, a fixed idea of what it means to be a volunteer. And often the kind of opportunities people think about aren't always what is available. We've matched people with some really interesting volunteering opportunities, so really trying to make use of people's skills. So we had some people from a local accountancy practice who wanted to volunteer, and we matched them with a couple of small community development charitable bodies who were only newly formed and looking for some support in terms of basically accountancy support. So we were able to make a really good match with them, and they got a lot out of that opportunity. And I also think that at this moment in time, volunteering can be a really good way, can't it, of people who are thinking about changing jobs. So again, trying to match people with skills that they're looking to develop. So I think it's when you're looking at volunteers, actually taking that time to do that initial sift and understand what the volunteer is trying to get out of the opportunity, as well as understanding the kind of placements you're trying to make. I think both of those are really, really important. Sorry, I've muted myself. Does anyone else have anything they'd like to contribute? I can see we've got quite a few people on the call who've not had the opportunity to speak yet. Does anyone have anything they'd like to raise? Don't be shy. It could be a really, really quick officer meeting this time around. That's people want to go and get some lunch. It has run over. Oh no, Gareth's going to.
I've spoken more than enough, but just is now we've got the WhatsApp group and we've got the network and we've getting to know each other. Obviously, there is quite a lot of difference between a lot of different councils, and we've all got slightly different areas. I think it'd be good to try over the next year, before the next conference, to think about sub-thematic groups across the offices and things. I think it would help. I think this is really great. We have everyone coming together, but I can imagine even different offices within the council. I get people have networked a little more on particular themes. So I'm guessing it could be like, someone asking out who else is doing this, and let's set up another little WhatsApp group or set up a meeting on a Zoom or whatever. But I think it would be, because we've had some of these quite useful thematic meetings, the economy, inequality, the other one, the COVID response and stuff. I think taking some of those forward, I think it would be quite useful follow up, particularly in terms of that knowledge sharing and the I know the CCIN are keen to have the good case study out. So just a suggestion. I don't know if that's something you can facilitate, Jonathan. I'm not offering to facilitate all of it, but I'm happy to, Mark, from the Stevenage side, maybe put this thematic suggestion forward.
No, I think that's a great idea, Gareth. And now that we've got a lot more engagement with the officer group this year, there's been quite a few, there's been a lot of new councillors who've joined and are really keen to share best practice. And I think, again, with us all facing the same challenges posed by COVID, it's given a real catalyst for these kinds of conversations. So I think some, more thematic conversations where we can bring in different officers is a great idea. So I will take that forward, definitely. So any more before we wrap up? No? Okay, well, it's been lovely seeing you all on the call. Oh, just wait. I'll let Oliver come in and introduce himself first.
Hi, sorry, I can't use my camera, unfortunately, because my internet signal's just it's appalling. But I work for South Rural Borough Council, and we are submitting our community wealth building draft to Cabinet this October. And myself and my line manager has very much been interested in being part of this this group, and definitely being involved in future meetings as such in the future. That'd be good.
Thanks, Oliver. When it comes to some of the community wealth building strategies, it seems like quite a lot of people are working on them. If there's an opportunity to share them when they've been published, I think there'd be a real appetite across the network to sort of have a look at them and share best practice. Yeah, we do have the forum as well where people can upload them. So if that's an opportunity, I'd really appreciate it.
Yeah, we would definitely be open to that. Definitely, especially if the draft comes back and from Cabinet and there's changes, we'd also like to hear from the people as well of anything that they've put forward.
Great, thanks, Oliver. And Gareth, I think that's a really good suggestion. The community wealth building officer sort of thematic area for the network. Again, it does seem to be one of those hot topics at the moment. So definitely one to look at. So we'll do that.
Can I just ask? Sorry, it's just Oliver again.
Yeah, of course.
Currently, has anybody actually approached anchor institutions about their community wealth building programme as of yet? Is anyone that far advanced?
Yes, we have. We've actually done it through our recovery programme, which is called Resurgam, which means I will rise in Latin. It was painted on the door of one of the churches after the Blitz in 1941. Resurrected it. And as part of that, we've got 5 kind of themed programmes emerging. There's all sorts of ideas around pillars and all sorts on the Resurgam website that you'll see, but the Spend for Plymouth pillar is all about getting everybody in Plymouth to think about what the impact is of their procurement in Plymouth. And part of that is trying to get the other anchor institutions to look at what they're spending locally and what the gaps are in local spend. And actually, it's we had a Plymouth procurement partnership going before, and they got as far as agreeing that they all buy food. So getting deeper than that has taken this crisis, I think, to get people to really dig out those procurement schedules and see what they're buying and where they're buying it from and where their suppliers are. So we're, quite hopeful that something will come out of that. It's been hard though. It's been harder than any other aspect of community wealth building that we've done.
Even just for having the draft that we have now, and I think we've got 5 pillars as well, and I do think that definitely the approach is something that I'm not looking forward to. I'm looking forward to say the least, to try and get around that, to approach institutions. Thanks very much.
Because Anna, you've also done a report, haven't you, on doubling the size of your cooperative economy, which was a really interesting piece of work.
Yeah, workshop 6 tomorrow. Be there, or and we went into all different aspects of people and how you raise awareness and all those kinds of different things that you can do to develop the co-op economy. But I think that Cleveland are a higher example of community wealth building, where they actually took a service that was needed by all of the anchor institutions and set up the laundry in a deprived part of Cleveland. Is the panacea, really, isn't it? It's the golden egg that keeps on giving. And I mean, we set up a cooperative wellbeing hub a few years ago called the Four Greens Community Trust, which kind of does that. It's like a business centre, really, for health and wellbeing services in one of our more deprived communities. But it didn't bring together all of the anchor institutions so much as it brought together all of the suppliers. So we had a group of suppliers that we knew would benefit from co-locating. So we worked from the supply point of view rather than the demand point of view. So yeah, there were lots of case studies like that in the report, and it's under the policy website, the CCIN website, under the policy lab.
Yeah, hopefully I've just put a link to it in the chat.
Thank you. I was thinking, I'm just looking to find that, and I've obviously closed it this morning.
So I hope that helps, Oliver.
Yes, thank you. Yes, I'll be looking through that case study when I get off this call. Thanks very much.
But as Gareth suggested, we'll probably have, we'll look at having a more of a dedicated session on that in the near future. So if that's helpful. Anything else, anybody, before we finish? No, in that case, enjoy the rest of the conference, and thank you for coming and contributing to today's call. It's always good just to catch up and see you all. It's a shame it's not in person this year, but hopefully next year we can all catch up at next year's annual conference.
Definitely.
Thanks, Jonathan.
Thanks, Jonathan. Nice to see you all.
See you soon.
Bye.
Thank you.